Okay, so welcome to part 3 of tonight's Opportunity Zone meeting. Our topic for tonight are challenges in opportunity zones. We're looking at criticisms that are starting to enter into the press and conversation about why opportunity zones aren't everything that they were originally hoped to be. And in our last section, we identified 10 challenges that are common to opportunity zones. And in this section, we're now going to start talking about potential fixes, things that could be done to address these particular challenges and make it easier, better, quicker, faster to do an opportunity zone project. So starting with the first one that's on the list, which is awareness, we're going to say, well, what can we do to overcome the fact that a lot of people have no idea what an opportunity zone is, or what they know is incomplete, or worse yet, what they know is wrong. And so what we're looking at here in the fixed category is we need more case studies. Even though, as we talked about, a true opportunity zone project's 10 years, we won't know that one's truly successful until 10 years from now. There are certain things that would be viewed as success, and one of the first ones is raising the opportunity zone money. The second would be deployment, and then we do have to sit and wait and see how the thing stirs. Certain projects are going to start seeing clear milestones in 1, 2, or 3 years. Some may actually be done and are being projects that are rolled over within an opportunity zone fund without a distribution of the capital gains. So certain real estate projects, you might see a really good developer do 3 to 4 projects over 10 years, each time compounding up the amount of money that work as they go through this process. There are other businesses with shorter business cycles, but right now we're continuing to focus on businesses that can last 10 years, that could get to the other side of this without going through liquidation or acquisition. So more success stories is one, and right now we've got a few publications in the next section on resources. There is now a Facebook group. There's a couple publications that put out things about once a week on opportunity zones, and if we have a success story of any level, we can get information into those channels. Then at another level, you can get it into some of the people who originally sponsored this legislation, have them share the story, and we're getting into PR type of tactics to get the word out. But people just need to see more examples. They need to see how they work. And in between these 2 points, what I'm doing now is we're starting to do paper simulations where we're showing how the whole thing would work on paper. And then from there, our goal is to start doing pilots to say, here's one that's in motion. And even though, again, it's not a full 10-year cycle complete, it's far enough along that people go, I see how it works. It has some interesting new parts, but it's not so dissimilar to what I've been doing otherwise that we could do that. The other one I mentioned is we need to team with other sources of capital that are not well known. I was talking about the fact that the CDFA just completed a 4-part, 8-hour webinar on PACE programs. And for those of you who are not familiar, it stands with Property Assessed Clean and Energy. I had to read it off this thing.
You might talk about CDFA.
It's the Council of Development Financial Association, which is not actually correct, but it's close. They're a national group. They are a hardcore professional, do it right, do it at a high level, high quality. We're on our resource list because they do things so well, mostly on the public finance side, mostly to support municipalities and regional economic development people. But they have identified opportunity zones as an important thing, and they're doing special programs, and they have a working group just on opportunity zones. So they're a resource to draw upon to do that. And but the PACE program is certain states, I think it's 11 so far, have adopted a program that says if you will do something to improve the environmental impact of your building, your land, and so forth, we will allow you to take the cost of that, be financed by a third party who then is paid back out of the property taxes of that geographic area. And it changes the capital stack from a very significant standpoint because that money is treated like a down payment for purposes of lending groups like a bank, SBA loan, USDA loan. And so it counts towards your equity without it being equity. And it's a debt finance, and it basically can be part of your capital stack and can work very, very well for either power generation, environmental retrofit, or new build above code for environmental. But they have the same issue. It's relatively new, it's not fully implemented, not everybody knows about it. And so if we're talking about opportunity zones, which they mentioned in their webinar, we should be talking about, well, how can we exchange data lists? How can we get the same information in the same hands? Get a little efficiency going down that path. And there are other similar types of programs out there across the United States where if we will share the information amongst the groups and intentionally build models that take advantage of the full range of capital within a capital stack, then we're going to see a lot better progression on this particular issue. Then the next thing, it's all about real estate. And this is a video I input here, so just to keep you all entertained while I'm talking. We need to explain that opportunity zone businesses have higher potential tax benefits. It actually is pretty straightforward that, as I said, a business that goes 100x in 10 years isn't outlandish as far as a potential, but real estate will never go 100 times in 10 years. And so if somebody's actually investing for the maximum tax benefit, that's their goal. It isn't to be a real estate investor. It isn't to be a business investor. It's simply to go, I want more of my money protected within a tax-saving mechanism. They should look at businesses as a preferred choice over real estate. That story's not getting told. The story's still being dominated by real estate. And I have nothing against real estate taking full advantage of opportunity zones, except where they make a statement, this is all you can do with this because it's a real estate constrained business model, and they miss all the things that could be done with the business. One of the things we talked about earlier was innovation hubs, Michael, and that actually is a hybrid between a real estate project and a business project, because you would buy the real estate and develop it, but you would then develop businesses within that. And by taking an equity piece in each of the businesses like you would do in accelerator or incubator, you're hedging your bets between 10 to 20 different businesses that you're supporting and their potential upside, as well as the real estate that's there. And as long as the real estate isn't tweaked to the point that it's not marketable or it's strange or something and there is no secondary market for it, then this works very well together. Because when somebody's going, well, I want to do a real estate play, I want to do a business play, well, here's a hybrid. It's in between. One of the other things we need to do is also talk about, and I only put up a business target, but I could have put communities on there. A lot of times the impact on a community is grossly disproportional to the ROI. If we got 10 new businesses in a community that are each employing 10 people, 100 in total, in some communities, that would exceed the total work population of the community, and it certainly is not anything anybody's going to ignore, even in larger communities. But we don't talk about it that way. We're using the wrong metrics. We're not looking at it the way we should. And for a community that's suffering, and most of the distressed communities are suffering, meaning they're either stagnant, best case, or worst case, they're dying. And we're trying to reverse that trend. We're trying to infuse capital to create those new jobs and do those kinds of things. Well, that changes the entire the entire dynamic of that community. And we are not measuring those, even though we have talked extensively about this in social capital and impact capital. This is still missing. Now, there is a new form just came out. It's one of the developments. Actually, I should have mentioned, I forgot it earlier. The IRS is now going to require an Opportunity Zone Fund to provide information on your social impact. The form only has like 5 questions on it, so this is, in my mind, not a meaningful thing. But there is proposed legislation to ask for a lot more information. So if you're going to be an Opportunity Zone Fund, you have to remember that you may have advanced incremental reporting requirements over the 10-year life. You have to have the cost of that covered to collect and report it. And if you're doing a multi-asset fund that's investing in multiple businesses, you have to make sure that those businesses have a contractual obligation to complete the report to turn it over to the IRS. Otherwise, they could go off this way and you have no idea if they're in the zone, they're still qualified, social impact they're having. But these are the kinds of benefits that we're going to be talking about at a community level, and particularly in the community projects, where we're going to have to say, well, what can we do here? And one is to start explaining how opportunity zones work at the business level, and to make sure that everyone understands that businesses are better in terms of tax incentives.
Hi, Karl.
Yes.
I find that 1 and 2 go together, so if you use only cases or future cases of how things go in their only business, that kind of kills 2 birds, 1 stone.
In fact, we'll find that when we get down here, we can kill all these birds with the right success story. Because a lot of the problem is just it's fear of novelty, fear of innovation. These are all things that you and I, a lot of people in the room have dealt with through our career, where you go, here's something really cool, new, great, and they go, but it's new. And you're like, you know, that's not an evil word, even though it might be treated that way. And so until we have some demonstration of success, something that people can understand that it's not really different, it's just another thing, then we're going to struggle with this. And yeah, you're right, a good case study would solve both of them.
There also has to be a mechanism to get the story out there, whatever story you actually do have.
Right, and so that's what we were talking about in the last first question is, there are mechanisms already in place to share the story. And those are new, I call channels of communication focused on opportunity zones, but then you have all the economic development channels that are already in place, whether it's a Colorado Society of CPAs or it's the Colorado Bar Association. If you step down, and those are service provider functions, we've got all the economic development ones. So now in the state of Colorado, all the small business development centers could put this word out in the right fashion. And then we have a variety of industry groups on vertical segments.
And have you thought of family offices as a target?
A number of people, the question is, have we considered family offices as a source of capital? We actually, in particular within the Funders Fund, there is no source of capital we will not consider. At some point, yes, no, we will not bring anything from Colombia or maybe from Russia. But beyond that, we're probably pretty open.
Ukraine's okay.
Yeah, as of today, we've been told Ukraine is okay. But that's today. The point is, yeah, family offices have their own, if we want to call it, preferences and criteria. And a lot of times this will match 1-for-1 with everything they want to do. But they aren't always the first in line to try something new unless they are already doing some cutting edge impact investment type stuff. And it's partly because it's a give back or pay it forward type of thinking that often finds itself in use of that money. So yeah, they're there. They have their own challenges in communication because a lot of them have put up barriers because everybody's hitting them up for cash. And so you find that if you don't know the right person, a gatekeeper, it may be difficult even to talk to them.
Right. There are associations of family offices that
there are. And
have many meetings, actually.
Right. Anytime you get a chance to talk in front of the room, like I am now, you have a chance for me to talk to 184 people in the group, or put it up on YouTube so everybody in China can watch this tomorrow. If Steve gets it done quickly, they can watch the last one, which is actually pretty good. So the next one is businesses are not taking advantage of opportunity zones. And this is a repetition of a lot of conversation tonight. We need new things. We need new businesses, programs, systems to support raising capital. It doesn't have to be limited to opportunity zones, because this is a challenge no matter what kind of capital it is and no matter what kind of small business is involved. But the programs that are out there aren't getting the job done. When access to capital is perpetually 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 on the list of challenges to a small business, and has been for 40 years, we are not moving the needle on this problem up to this point. So we have to start rethinking this. And one of the things that we point out in doing these kinds of systems is a lot of these systems still force the small business to bear the primary brunt of how this is done. And so every time a small business does a capital campaign, they're reinventing the wheel. If you think in your life, Nate's the only exception in the room, what was the largest, most expensive one-off event in your life? Okay, it's usually your wedding, okay? And there was no intent to scale, replicate, take advantage, make that efficiency. That money is going out as fast as possible. And unfortunately, that's why a lot of capital campaigns are driven. They're going, oh, well, I have to go talk to people who I don't know. I've got to go places I haven't been. I've got to take away time from my business. And when I'm done, I'm going to throw all that stuff away because I don't need to raise money anymore. Or I did not raise any money, so I'm basically shutting the business down. And so we reinvent it. We need to be looking at systems that allow efficiency to occur. And that's in sharing data, sharing systems, sharing templates, and so on. And quit thinking that every investor looks alike, which is the way most systems work. And I could get into angel investment as an example of what not to do, but we don't need to. So the third thing here is we got to make it easier, quicker, and cheaper for a small business to take advantage of opportunity zones. There's lots of ways that can happen. What we've been working with our Funders Fund is going to try to address a good portion of these, but there's other things that also can be done at a community level or at an economic development level to make that happen. Our next issue, difficulty in matching money with opportunities. And again, what we're seeing is, here's a single purpose fund for a particular housing project. Well, that's not helping the business that's 4 miles away that is not a housing project. And at the same time, there was a fund, again, I won't mention by name, oh, we're happy to help any of you. Well, not all of you. Well, maybe just a few of you. Maybe if only you're going to become publicly traded someday. And we, so maybe we'll help 1 or 2 of you. And you're like, okay, this is back to some of the elements of angel funding. You're not really addressing the needs of the community. And if you're purely ROI focused, it's hard to reconcile that with helping a community that's in a distressed condition. It's much easier to go to like Rhino and build a high-rise apartment where it seems like there's no way you can fail than it is to go out to the Western Slope and put up a building or of any kind out there and compare those. They're not the same at all. I really appreciate what the state of Colorado did by making 60% of their opportunity zones in rural communities and being highly selective on those which they think had the potential to grow up and become something. Where in some states we've seen it, they just kind of pick the most distressed areas and there's nothing you can do there. They're in effect beyond help, and there's no way to turn that around, so they're wasting the opportunity zones as a resource to the state. So one of the things is we're going to have to get better at how we know a fund exists, what they fund, and who they qualify to fund what they're trying to do. Again, this is not a new issue, not new to opportunity zones, been here forever. There have been all kinds of ways of trying to reconcile this. And again, we're going to try to tackle this within our Center for Innovation and Capital by creating a new matchmaking system on a platform that at a certain size will have an AI capability with it. And we're going to ask for all kinds of information, basically any kind of information that any investor would ever want to know in making a decision is information we have to collect in the profile in order to match it with all the potential sources that are out there. Name, rank, and serial number, 3 years of profitability isn't going to get the job done. Or simply, I'm looking for money, which is the way a lot of these things are set up. Or on the other side, there's a couple directories which are in a resource group. They're funds, but they don't tell us what they fund, how they fund, when they fund, or if their money exhausted, where they're at in their investment cycle. So we need to share information better. And again, a collaborative approach will get us there quicker with less money than doing it at a city-by-city, opportunity zone by opportunity zone approach. Our next issue is uncertainty and regulations. There isn't a lot we can do in this zone. The IRS has been moving at faster than normal speed, but that doesn't mean it's anywhere near small business speed. It wouldn't hurt for everyone to contact their congressperson and say, you know, would you please contact the IRS and express to them that it would be helpful to everybody to move quicker. It also will educate your congressional representative that this is important enough for you to talk to them about it. And then unfortunately the alternative is don't wait. Now here in Colorado, where we legalized marijuana before almost everybody else, we're used to dealing in high levels of uncertainty and irreconcilable differences between federal and state law. And we're used to dealing with, we'll figure it out later, which is helpful right now when we're dealing with this, because you have to start looking at this stuff. What we found is a number of people who worked in new markets and funding of that nature. A lot of this legislation is an extension or an attempt to fix some of the existing legislation that has supported new market tax credits, including the definitions that are in the law. So you can kind of look backwards to get some idea where going forwards is going to be. And as long as this is helping enough distressed rural communities, it's going to be politically positive for somebody running for office to keep this in place. They don't have to hurry, but it wouldn't hurt for them to do that. But on this one, basically, it would be good to create a message to the IRS, please hurry. Long-term investment, as we talked about earlier, that we're not used to long-term investments. In fact, we started doing a research project towards a paper trying to determine the difference between the characteristics of a short-term investment and a long-term investment. And we largely found there isn't a lot of information out there. What we did find was that insurance companies and pension companies are the two common players in long-term types of investment. And there's probably a lot that can be learned from them trying to take what they do and thinking through this to see how it would apply to setting up the structure and foundation of an opportunity zone investment to make it better. One of the quotes that came out last week through one of the publications is tax-free compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. And it said the question shouldn't be how quickly can I get out, but how long can I leave my money in? You have the right to leave this in until 2046. You don't have to come out in 10 years. You don't have to come out in 2029 or 30 or 31 or 32. You can go all the way to 2046. And you're saying, well, okay, we've got risk issues that are there because the world's a-changing. We have liquidity issues, but those can be mitigated if we figure out how to borrow against this money. Similar to borrowing against an IRA, 401k, or in a whole life insurance policy, there are ways to take the 10 years and go, that's really not an issue. I can create liquidity. I can create an advantage, meaning that what else are you going to do over that 10 years? You take the money out, you've got it, you're going to put it into something that's taxable when you could have left it in something that's non-taxable.
Karl, point. That's just a
Right.
generic point.
So, yeah, so I agree that one of the things businesses often don't look at is the long-term horizon. And I was working with a DU group down in Belize in August, talking with some banana farmers, and they were pointing out, we're having a drought, we need to put in new irrigation. I have no money, I can't see beyond tomorrow. I need to do this, we have a virus, I have no money, I can't. I mean, the shortage of capital amplifies short-term thinking off the scale to the point of I'm surviving. So I agree with you on the fact that we need to help them think long-term, but the other thing we were talking about earlier on the Innovation Hub is we think we also need to embed into the business the agility, flexibility to shift with markets, because nobody can truly project markets where they're going to be. There are some long-term trends that are predictable. You know, don't go down that path, don't go down this path, but at the same time, there are limits there. And so we want to be thinking about what else can we do that has them continue reassessing where they're going instead of locking into something that may take them over the cliff. And as we talked about earlier, this is a really challenging, almost new concept to think long term. And as we're looking at primary goal of 10-year sustainability, we have to rethink a whole lot of things or abandon things that are common in the capital industry from assessment and examination. Ron. Right, but I agree with Michael when he's saying that there are certain trends that are accepted as being long-term. You don't want to go against the riptide. You want to be moving in the same direction. You may need to adjust your technology and update it throughout that cycle, but you want to ride the wave all the way to the beach, not the other way around. Have the wave ride you all the way to the beach. So the next one that's on the list is the difficulty of matching schedules. And I think that this is a topic that, again, is a communication combined with better planning. When are you going to raise money? Well, as soon as we're ready. That's unfortunately a common answer. Who are you going to raise it from? I don't know is the second most common answer. If you start figuring out who to talk to and when you're going to raise money, what you're going to raise money for, and then communicate that within better channels, better forums, I think this will address this problem a little bit. This problem is never going to get great as far as a solution, but better planning and better communication will reduce the problem of I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm ready to receive capital and there's no capital there for me. The next one on my list, the original 8 list, was there's not enough Opportunity Zone money. And what we have found is there's 2 fairly simple things to do that can help a lot. One is a lot of the Opportunity Zone investment is limited to accredited investors. That's because securities regulations allow you to publicize an offering to find investors if you limit it to accredited, but accredited only make up 3% of the population. And as a consequence, the other 97% are automatically disqualified. Even if they have capital gains that meet the Opportunity Zone requirement, they can't play in this game because they're not accredited. So if you move to a crowdfunding model where you are allowed to talk about it, which is either limited within an intrastate or at a Reg A or to some degree a Reg CF at the federal level, then now you've got a broader spectrum of people who can invest. Anyone who has any capital gain from anywhere, which could have occurred intentionally or it just happened. The other one is that we are now doing on almost every raise, and we're doing it with our funders fund, is we're running concurrent non-Opportunity Zone capital campaigns at the same time. So we're running a private placement. We're running it so non-accredited can participate, but we're working towards the same goal. So for every dollar that's raised into the Opportunity Zone fund, it's one less dollar we can raise to the private placement, and that reverses. If we end up funding the whole thing with private placement money, then we're not an Opportunity Zone fund, but we have our money. And back to what was our goal? The whole purpose of Opportunity Zone funding was to get us to our goal. So these are 2 things that can make a big difference in a hurry, which is to try to figure out how to overcome the fact that the Oz money may not be where you want, when you want, from where you want by going to non-Oz money and by opening it up to all investors. So then that takes me through my 8 list. We had 2 more items that came up from contributions from you all, and that is complexity and communities. And complexity in innovation tends to disappear with practice and repetition and acceptance and overcoming the novelty aspect. So in some ways, you talk about combining these all together, is we need more success stories. At the same time, some of the enhancements that we talked about earlier are more complex, and they'll require more difficulty in implementing, but they have a higher probability of success. They overcome a lot of the other challenges. So we may see some trade-offs where complexity goes up, but success goes up with it. So there's a reason to gain complexity to achieve a higher outcome. Any other suggestions on things that might be done to reduce complexity? Had a very interesting conversation with a fund yesterday where they're trying to do rural communities, and the source of capital is talking about $50 million, $100 chunks, and have no understanding of what a rural community is. And rather than having a single massive 500-story hotel on the Vegas Strip, we're talking about spreading this over 100 different assets in different communities and rural areas. There's a whole translation communication issue taking place because ordinarily we think in portfolio management and diversity and spreading the risk, but in this case that story is not communicated across. And that may be something where we have to do more complications to say, how can we reduce the risk or assure there's a guaranteed buyout or some of the other things? So they go, I really don't care where it's at. If you give me an 8% guaranteed annualized rate of return with a tax benefit, I don't care if you're in Montrose or Durango or Pueblo or Rhino. Doesn't make any difference to me.
One of the things I think that
Seen Jurassic Park and knows what the outcome is if not allowing for that. You get eaten by dinosaurs. So the last one on the list is communities. And I think this is an interesting challenge in its own right because now we're dealing with some of the educational elements. We're dealing with some of the complexity elements. There may or may not be any resources to contribute to this. I was meeting with a local city yesterday about a project, and we're not big enough to throw anything at this. We'll try to get out of your way. We'll try to be helpful. We'll try to introduce you, which are all valuable things. Not diminishing that at all. But no, there's no money here to help you put this together. And I'm okay with that. But I always do like it when I can go, oh, there's some low-cost, easy financing here that can make this whole thing a whole lot less complex. Because it comes in early and it helps build my capital stack. Because there's lots of money on top of the stack you can go after, from common bank financing to other things, but that first dollar in's the hard money to get. This one's going to evolve. I don't have a simple answer for this. I think if we do all the other things, and when we were working with Tom Fry on a list of all the challenges in the world, we had poverty in number 10 position. But we figured if we solved the first 9, that poverty might disappear on its own because it's more of a consequence or it's impacted by all the other things on the list. So by the time we get to the community level, if we can address these other 9, we may find that that's not such a big issue. Or by the time we address the other 9, it's 2046 and it won't matter any longer. So. No, actually, we're in a charter state. It varies from state to state. If I get 10 people and a piece of dirt and we all agree that we want to put together a charter city, there's nothing to stop us from doing that. And a lot of times in working with certain communities who also go unnamed, it would be much better to go to the edge of town and build a brand new city side by side and basically scrape particularly the utilities and infrastructure of the old town because they're not fixable. They're not maintainable. They're actually a drag on the community that's helping kill that community off because of their high cost relative to where it is elsewhere. And one of the communities we were talking to in New Mexico, they basically could not reconcile with the status quo of the existing community and set up their own right at the edge of town. And they're now doing things differently. Centennial as a Sudden City. One of the first labels applied to it was Sudden City. They said we didn't want to be Aurora and we didn't want to be Greenwood Village. So we don't want to be taxed to death. So we're going to create a minimalization city government, and boom, it came out of 3 years of litigation, but it happened. So we'll see how it happens at the community level, but I think if we do a lot of the rest of this, but what similar here though in the case studies, I think if we have community programs where there's multiple players involved, and again, examples of that, then that will help other organizations go, we can do it too, and we have the resources we need to get here from there. Where right now they're all like, I don't know if we can do that. So I'm thinking success is going to solve that particular problem. So that brings me to the end of this part. So that brings us to the end of part 4. I am going to walk through tonight. I don't do this every event. Some of the resources that are available, we've added a number of new sources to the list that I want to bring to your attention. And these are other groups, other organizations, other individuals who are doing good things within the Opportunity Zone, are considered a source of knowledge and something that you may want to pay attention to. You'll be getting the slide deck tomorrow morning, so you don't have to worry about rapidly writing down everything I say or talk about. But the state of Colorado is continuing to be a major advocate for Opportunity Zones, and they are going to be putting on a conference October 1st. They're putting together the program now, and we'll see how that goes. But they've come out with some new programs. For those of you who are service providers, they are creating a directory now of all the service providers in the state who are supporting Opportunity Zones. Just came out this week. And there are some new micro programs to help them, which I'm still trying to, are going to be announced next week, I guess, or in 2 weeks.
So that's a grant up to $2,000?
Yeah.
What is that? Sorry.
I don't know. I asked the question, and I have not been able to get a total answer to that yet. Then we have Ross, who's here tonight, who has created his own mapping of Opportunity zones within the state of Colorado, and has additional data beyond what's currently available at the state, which give you a better idea maybe about the community where the Opportunity Zone is located. So Ross is continuing to help us all out there. We then have the video recordings. All of you are familiar with the fact that every one of these events is recorded by Steve Maltz with AdCom, who does an awesome job. And typically within a week of the event, a week to 2 weeks, we'll get all the editing done, and it's posted up on YouTube, and we'll notify all of you when it's available and give you all the links. The video for the last event will be posted. It's already posted, but it'll be labeled correctly with the right descriptors and hashtags sometime tomorrow morning before I leave town. Then we have a Facebook group. This is a relatively recent group that has come in under Opportunity Fund. They're sharing information and stories and so forth, and you can get a slightly different perspective, different look at the Opportunity Zone industry as it's evolving. We have the Oz Guide, which is put out by Mendora. And it's a pretty good ongoing source of information. Again, it's kind of like a newsletter or news magazine that talks about different projects going on. That can be a good place to look for ideas. This is the one I announced just a couple weeks ago. No, this is a new one. This is the Council Development Finance Agency, CDFA. If you're doing anything in terms of economic development, urban planning, financing in a community at the municipal level or whatever, this is a top flight blue chip organization that puts on awesome programs all the time on this area. They're the ones who hosted the program on PACE financing yesterday. It's a 4-part, 8-hour program on PACE, and it was free. A lot of their stuff, there are price tags associated with it, but good quality, completely comprehensive and funding municipal projects of any shape, size, or form. Then we have this one. This is the directory that was published a couple weeks ago by the National Council of State Housing Authorities. This is a list of all the known opportunity zones that they're aware of the funds. So if you're looking for funding, you may find money from this source that aligns with your particular project. Now, most of these projects are hyper-local. A lot of them are very fixed or siloed as to what they're willing to look at, so your project may or may not be something of interest to them. But again, if you're getting into something that has either replication potential or it may be impacting a social cause, you may find something in here that matches up with you. So this is, as far as I know, it's the largest list of opportunity zone funds that exist in the United States. Then this is the Global Institute of Innovation Districts. As we've been working on embedding innovation into opportunity zones, this is a group that recently formed, and a lot of them are spin-offs from yet another institute who's been doing work on innovation districts as a organized, local, hyper-local effort to instill economic growth based on innovation. And they just formed this new group, and they're getting more active into opportunity zones as it crosses over with what they're doing.
Is this in Colorado, or do you know where this is?
Most of these people are out of the East Coast. I'm sorry I can't recall the group they were with before, but it was more of a household name, large brand institute that does a lot of think tank stuff, and I've been following the work of the individuals for several years, and I think that they're going to again bring some new insight, different perspective to how you might want to look at an opportunity zone regardless of where it's located. And then there's me. So last but not least, we have our Meetup Group. This is the link to it. We have a library which is in development, and with Nate's switch to more incentivized work, we're expecting to see this improved a lot. And then I'm available for contact on working with the zone. Right now, there are lots of things going on. The knowledge base is increasing. The growth in opportunity zones is geometrically going up. It's looking more and more like a hockey stick all the time. And as more people become familiar and the communities get involved, more businesses jump into this, I don't see this thing slowing down for the next 2 to 3 years because the incentives are still on the back end, and they're still there for the having. So there we are for this evening. Thank you all for coming. And that's a wrap for this evening, Steve.